The hollow call. 0000 to 0200. Arrival.
The Chinook slams over the ridges of the Appalachians, its thumping rotors rattling loose gear inside the dim, red-lit cabin. Strike Team Echo 4, 5 operators, sit strapped in with faces set like stone. Captain Reed studies the tablet in his lap, a blinking red dot where the Cedar Hollow Ranger station should be. The distress beacon had been transmitting for 20 minutes, then cut out. Cole, their comms specialist, leans in over the noise.
Can't find this station on current park records. Closest listing's a facility that burned in '97.
Hale, point man, raises an eyebrow.
Then what the hell sent the signal?
The bird sets down in a frost-bitten clearing. Beyond the landing zone, thick hemlocks, low fog, and the silhouette of the ranger station, slouched and rotting in the gloom.
0200 to 0400. First sweep.
Weapons up, NVG's on, the team advances. It's late August, but their breath fogs the air. Inside the station, the lights are dead. Dust and the smell of charred wood cling to everything. On the desk, a steaming coffee cup. Cole moves to the radio. The mic sways gently, as if just set down.
Someone keyed this. No more than a minute before we got here.
Reed flips through a logbook. Last entry, August 9th. Howling again. Westridge. Lights in the trees. Same place as last time. Cole tries to raise HQ, but instead of static, there's breathing. Slow, deep, and wet.
0400 to 0600. Locals with no memory.
The nearest settlement is a cluster of cabins with oil lamps burning. Dogs watch them from doorways but do not bark. They ask about the station. Everyone claims it burned decades ago. A woman with sunken cheeks says, they never found the bodies. Some say they went walking into the woods instead of burning. Back at the tree line, Vega stops, whispering,
Guy in a ranger hat, watching us.
The beam of Reed's light cuts only empty fog.
0600 to 0800. The woods turn.
They follow the West Ridge Trail. The deeper they go, the quieter it gets. No birds, no bugs, just the muffled crunch of boots on damp leaves. Hale halts.
Hear that?
A sound like water rushing beneath the ground. It leads them to a black creek that reflects no light. Hale slips in. They pull him out shivering, muttering about lanterns under the water, waving me in.
0800 to 1000. Escalation.
Fog coils tighter around them. Vega hears whispering in the trees. Mason swears he smells campfire smoke. Cole's GPS pings them miles from where they stand. From the mist, they glimpse half-seen things. A group of rangers walking single file, faces turned toward the sky, mouths open. A buck with antlers that branch like hands, eyes milky white. Hale's own reflection in a puddle, smiling when his real face does not. Lantern lights appear, moving in slow arcs.
Looks like they're signaling.
When they close in, the lights scatter.
1000. 1100. First loss.
Hale's scream rips the fog. They find his rifle warm in the moss. The sling snapped. Cole rewinds his helmet audio. Just before the scream, a rasping voice whispers,
"Come back where you belong."
1100. 1200. The forest won't let go.
They attempt to retreat. Every route loops them back to the same cedar tree Reed marked earlier. Cole's radio spits out old ranger chatter, call signs from the 90s, panicked voices saying,
"Under the ground. Don't look it in the face."
A pale figure appears. Pale. Head tilted too far. Eyes pure black. The fog eats him again.
1200 to 1300. Collapse.
Vega runs after a flare. She never comes back. They find her flashlight still warm. Cole says, trembling,
"They're here, in the trees, smiling at me."
Reed and Mason rush toward him, find only his headset lying in moss. The forest begins to whisper in dozens of overlapping voices. "Stay, stay, stay." Mason panics, fires wildly, then is yanked backward into darkness.
1300 to 1400. The hollow claim.
Alone, Reed stumbles back to the station. Now it's warm, lit from within. Inside, the Rangers sit with Hale, Vega, Cole, Mason, laughing, sipping coffee. They all turn their heads toward him at the exact same second. "You came when we called." Something moves in the shadows behind them. Tall, wrong-limbed.
1400 to 1500. Survivor.
3 days later, search and rescue finds Reed wandering a fire road, barefoot, mumbling to himself. He's dehydrated, frostbitten, covered in cedar needles, with a 1,000-yard stare. When debriefed, he can't remember the squad's names. When shown photos, he insists they're still in the station, waiting for him. Sometimes he smiles and says they just stepped out to get more coffee. On the 3rd night in the secure hospital ward, he wakes screaming, convinced there's a lantern swaying outside his window. Security footage shows nothing, except in the last second of tape, a tall figure in a flat-brim ranger hat standing in the corner of his room.
Blackout at Outpost 19.
I've been on more cold weather deployments than I can count, but nothing. Nothing gets under your skin like the Arctic silence. No wind, no birds, no crunch of boots unless you make it. Just the sound of your own blood pumping in your ears and the unsettling knowledge that if you scream, the snow swallows it up before anyone hears. We were 6 men, all Army engineers, dropped by a Chinook onto a remote plateau in northern Alaska to repair Outpost 19, a long-range communications relay station that went dark 4 days earlier. Officially, it was a weather telemetry array. Unofficially, it patched into NORAD's early warning radar net. That's the kind of thing you don't let stay offline. Our CO, Captain Mallory, was career military, quiet, squared away, not much for talking. Beside him was Specialist Vega, our comms tech, the only one who knew the guts of the relay's systems. Then there was Corporal Anders, Sergeant Reed, PFC Torres, and me, Staff Sergeant Cole. I was in charge of site security, which meant keeping my eyes open for polar bears, the rare snow leopard, or in our case, anyone who shouldn't be near sensitive hardware in the middle of nowhere. The Chinook dropped us off at 0400, still pitch black. Sun wouldn't rise for another 3 hours. We were supposed to get the generator back online, reboot the system, and radio home. 2 days max, maybe 3. Then, we'd be flown out. But from the moment we stepped off that helo, things didn't feel right.
Arrival.
The outpost should have been lit, just a dim yellow glow from the generator-fed bulbs strung between the prefab huts. Instead, it was dead black. The snow around the buildings was undisturbed. except for a strange, sweeping arc of marks about 50 feet from the main hut. Not footprints. More like something dragged across the ice, smudging the wind crust into an uneven crescent.
Tracks? But from what?
Torres asked, clicking his rifle's safety.
Not animal.
Anders muttered.
Not human, either.
Mallory said.
Eyes forward. Get the generator running first.
We approached the largest hut, the control building. Reed went in first, sweeping with his flashlight. The beam caught motes of ice in the air, swirling lazily like they didn't know they were inside. On the floor, frost had crept across the concrete in jagged, feathery veins. The generator room was in the rear, accessed through a short, dark hallway. It smelled wrong. Not like fuel or stale air. More like copper and wet fur. Vega got to work on the generator, muttering to himself. The rest of us cleared the perimeter and checked the other huts. Mess hall, empty. Sleeping quarters, still made up. Sleeping bags frozen stiff. No sign of the 3-man crew assigned here.
First sign.
We got power running by 0615. The fluorescent bulbs flickered to life with a weak bluish hum. The heaters kicked in, groaning against the cold. But when the lights came on, I saw something I wish I hadn't. On the far wall of the control room, near the comms rack, frost patterns climbed almost to the ceiling. Not just random ice, it was spiraling, perfect concentric rings, tighter toward the center like the cross-section of a shell. Inside that smallest ring, the frost was melted, bare, almost warm to the touch.
Condensation,
Vega said too quickly, but I could tell he didn't believe it. We tried to raise command. Static. Vega frowned, rechecked the settings. Still nothing. He suggested maybe the main dish outside needed to be physically realigned. So, at 8:30, I took Anders and Torres out to check it. We trudged through knee-deep powder to the dish tower, and that's when we saw them.
The things in the snow.
About 20 yards beyond the outpost fence, in a shallow depression, were shapes, half buried in the snow. At first, I thought they were rocks. Then one of them moved. It was subtle, just a twitch, but enough to set my teeth on edge. They were pale, almost translucent, like ice sculptures of people. No eyes, no hair, limbs too long, and their heads tilted slightly, in unison, when they noticed us. Back to the hut now, I ordered. Torres hesitated.
What in the hell are those things?
I said move. We didn't run, but we didn't walk slow either. When we looked back, the shapes were gone.
Isolation.
We told Mallory. He didn't question what we saw, which somehow made it worse. He ordered everyone to stay inside until we could get comms back. Reed volunteered to guard the door. The wind picked up, moaning low around the hut walls. Hours passed. Vega cursed softly at his equipment. I sat by the front window, scanning the white void outside. That's when I saw one. It was standing right at the fence line, perfectly still, just tall enough that its head and shoulders rose above the snow berm. And it was smiling. Not with lips, but with a faint distortion, like the way heat ripples over asphalt. My rifle sight couldn't quite focus on it. When I blinked, it was gone.
Nightfall.
By 1700, the Arctic night swallowed us again. The generator's hum was the only sound until it stopped. The lights died. The heaters idwit silent. For a moment, we just listened. Then came a sound from outside. soft, deliberate crunching in the snow. Multiple sets of footsteps circling the hut. Mallory whispered,
Weapons ready.
Something scraped along the wall, high up, like claws or fingers. We moved to cover the doors and windows. Then, from the back hallway, we heard Reed scream.
The hallway.
I was first to reach him. My flashlight caught him half dragged into the generator room. Something had him by the legs, pulling him into the dark. I fired. 3 short bursts. The rounds punched into something, and it let go. Reed scrambled back, bleeding from a dozen shallow cuts. The doorway was empty. No movement, just the frost on the floor, and new patterns in it. This time, not spirals, more like handprints. Hundreds of them.
Final push.
We couldn't stay. The generator was gone for good. The cold would finish us before morning. Mallory ordered a break for the Chinook's emergency beacon, stashed in the comms hut. We'd make a run for it. We stepped out into the night, rifles up, moving in a tight diamond. The snowstorm had picked up. Visibility down to 20 feet. One by one, they appeared in the dark. Those pale, too long figures, just at the edge of sight. Moving when we moved, stopping when we stopped. Their heads tilting in that sick, curious way. We didn't fire. Not yet. The beacon hut was 30 yards away when Torres screamed. One of them had lifted him, straight up, like a doll, and carried him silently into the blizzard. We never saw him again.
Extraction.
We made it to the hut. Vega got the beacon transmitting. 20 minutes later, we heard the distant chop of rotor blades. The Chinook didn't land. The pilot radioed us to grab the rope ladder. Something about too many on the ground to touch down safely. But when I looked around, there were only 5 of us left. As we climbed, I looked down. The figures were gathering below, heads tilted up, watching us rise into the dark. And for the first time, they moved their mouths. No sound came out, but I swear I could read the words on their lips. Come back. We didn't, but I still hear them when it's quiet. And sometimes, I still see frost spirals on my bedroom wall when I wake.
Phantom wind.
There's a particular kind of heat in the Middle East that feels personal. It doesn't just bake you, it tests you. The sun pushes down until you feel hollow. Your sweat dries before it can cool you, and every breath tastes like dust and old stone. We were deep in the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, on a mission so far off the books I still can't find the operation number in my own file. 6 of us, Army Special Forces, inserted at 0300 to locate a downed CIA drone carrying some kind of high-value sensor package. Officially, it crashed. Unofficially, someone shot it down. Our job was to reach it before anyone else did. The drone's last GPS ping put it near the ruins of an ancient desert fortress, a place so far from anything that even satellite maps didn't show a road in. The team, Captain Branson, level-headed and pragmatic, Sergeant Willis, my second-in-command, Corporal Hale, medic, Specialist Daniels, our comms guy, and PFC Nunez, our youngest. I was Staff Sergeant Mason, tasked with leading the ground sweep. We all thought the biggest threat would be insurgents or dehydration, but the desert had other ideas.
Approach to the ruins.
We reached the fortress just before dawn. From a distance, it was a jagged silhouette against the sand. Weathered battlements half collapsed, a gate that leaned like a broken jaw. The walls were blackened. not from fire, but from something older. Almost like the stone itself had been scorched by lightning centuries ago. No tracks in or out, no sign of the drone. We went in through the breach where the gate once stood. Inside, the sand was piled in strange ridges, almost like dunes, but too symmetrical. Hale muttered something about it looking like ripples in water. That's when the wind picked up. Not the usual hot breeze, but a sudden icy current that cut through our gear. It carried a sound with it, faint at first, like a low moan, then almost like whispering. Branson called for a 360 perimeter while Daniel set up the comms gear. But I found myself looking at one particular tower, the tallest one still standing. The whisper seemed to come from there.
First signs.
Daniels couldn't raise command, just static. The drone beacon was offline, either smashed or jammed. Branson ordered us to sweep the fortress in two-man teams. I got paired with Nunez and took the east wing. Inside, the air was cooler but thicker, like the walls were holding in centuries of dust. We passed faded murals painted directly onto the stone. Figures in long robes, faces hidden behind veils, each holding curved blades. The eyes on the murals weren't right. Too bright. Too alive. We turned a corner into a collapsed chamber. Half the roof was gone, sunlight spilling in, catching something metallic in the sand. Nunez stepped forward to grab it. A drone wing fragment, scorched along one edge. Then the whispering stopped. The silence was sudden and heavy. I felt my ears pop, like the air pressure had dropped. Nunez froze mid-step.
Mason,
He whispered, pointing past me. I turned. At the edge of the sunlight stood a man in a tattered robe, face hidden beneath a black veil. The fabric moved in a wind I couldn't feel. His hands were empty. Then, without moving his legs, he slid closer, just there in the next heartbeat. I raised my rifle. He tilted his head, as if amused. And then he came apart. Not like blood and bone, like sand scattering in a gust, vanishing into the air.
The wind turns.
We regrouped at the courtyard. Willis and Hale had similar stories. Shapes seen in peripheral vision, gone when approached. Daniel swore he heard someone speaking directly into his ear, but no one was there. The wind returned, stronger this time, whirling dust into small, darting eddies that seemed to follow us. Branson made the call. Grab whatever drone parts we could find, call in extraction early. But as we moved toward the breach, the opening was gone. Sand had piled up in the gate overnight. No storm, no time for that to happen naturally. Something didn't want us leaving.
Nightfall in the fortress.
We set camp inside the courtyard, taking shifts on watch. The temperature dropped fast, the desert sky pouring out 1,000 stars. I was on second watch when I saw it again. A figure, taller this time, moving along the top of the wall. No sound of footsteps, just the hiss of sand shifting. It stopped above me, looking down. The veil lifted slightly in the wind, but there was nothing beneath. No face, just an endless dark, deeper than shadow.
Mason.
It said. My name, clear as day, but in a voice like two pieces of stone grinding together. I blinked, and it was gone.
The attack.
It started with the sound, a high, keening wail that grew until it rattled the stones. The wind surged in from all directions at once, lifting sheets of sand into the air. From it, figures formed, dozens, maybe hundreds, all robed, all faceless, moving with unnatural speed. We opened fire. Bullets ripped through them like through mist, their forms exploding into sand, only to reassemble moments later. Hail went down first, pulled screaming into a dust cyclone and vanishing. Daniels tried the sat phone. Useless. Branson yelled for us to fall back into the tallest tower, bottleneck them at the stairs. It worked, for a while. They couldn't climb more than 2 or 3 at a time, but they didn't need to. The wind was in the tower with us, slicing at exposed skin, tearing straps and gear away. One of them slid right through the wall beside me, reforming from the grit in the cracks. It reached for my face with long, thin fingers. I shot it, point blank. Nothing. It leaned close enough for me to smell dry earth and old graves. "You took what was ours," it whispered.
Extraction.
By dawn, we were down to 4. The wind died as suddenly as it began. The figures were gone. The gate breach was clear again. We stumbled out into the desert, barely able to see straight. 2 miles out, a Black Hawk found us, guided by Branson's emergency flare. From the air, I looked back at the fortress. The sand inside was smooth again. No sign of our camp. No sign of the drone wreckage. Nothing. Later, we were told the drone's payload contained ground-penetrating radar scans of that exact area. It had found something buried deep beneath the fortress. Command wouldn't tell us what. I think I know, though. When the wind picks up in my backyard back home, sometimes I hear the whisper again. Only now, it's not saying my name. It's asking me to come back.
The hollow in the jungle.
The jungle has a way of swallowing you, not just physically, but mentally. You start by thinking you're navigating through it, but after a while, it feels like it's navigating around you. We were on a black recon op in the Golden Triangle, deep in the borderlands where Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand blur together into one endless wall of green. Our mission was to locate and document a suspected cartel-run lab producing experimental narcotics, stuff rumored to be strong enough to be weaponized. Our team was small. Captain Barrett, the CO, Sergeant First Class Riker, my second, Corporal Finch, our medic, Private Grant, the youngest, and me, Staff Sergeant Holt, recon lead. We were dropped by riverboat 2 days' trek from our last known friendly point. That far out, even the animals sound different. The calls don't match anything you know. Just strange, wet clicks and echoing cries that sound like they're coming from every direction at once.
The first disappearance.
On day 2, we found the first sign we were in the right area, a narrow game trail beaten flat in a way no animal could have managed. Barrett called for a stop and pointed out what I'd already noticed, faint footprints in the mud. Barefoot. Human. Leading deeper in. We followed them until we came across something that made the whole team go quiet. A boot. A US-issue jungle boot, half buried in the muck. Inside it was still a foot. No sign of the rest of the body. Finch muttered,
Predator?
but I shook my head. Whatever had done this left no other trace. By nightfall, the humidity felt like soup in my lungs. We set camp in a small clearing, taking shifts on watch. Riker had first watch. When I woke for my shift, Riker was gone. His rifle, his pack, all still there. Just gone.
Voices in the dark.
We searched the area with NVGs, fanning out but staying within line of sight. The jungle closed in around the beams of our flashlights, every leaf glistening like wet skin. Then I heard it. Riker's voice. Not far off. Low, urgent.
Hold. Over here. I'm hurt.
I started toward it before my brain caught up with my legs. Something was wrong. The cadence of the voice, the pauses between words just weren't quite right.
Hold.
Barrett hissed.
Get back in formation.
The voice came again, this time from the other side of the clearing. Same exact tone, same inflection, like someone had recorded him and was playing it back. We pulled back to camp. No one slept.
The lab.
On the morning of day 3, we found it. The lab was nothing more than a cluster of corrugated metal shacks hidden under a canopy net. Empty. No signs of a firefight. No rush to leave. Just abandoned mid-use. Chemical drums were still open, lab glassware still coated with residue. The only thing missing was the people. Grant swore he saw someone moving just inside the tree line while we swept the buildings. I checked. Nothing but dense, wet leaves. But I did find something. A hole. It was just beyond the last shack, almost perfectly round, about 3 feet across, disappearing straight down into blackness. The edges weren't dug by tools. They were smoothed, like the inside of a pipe. Something about it made the hair on my arm stand up. I told Barrett we needed to mark it for extraction and leave. He agreed, reluctantly.
The hollow.
We were less than half a click from camp when we heard it again. Riker's voice, then Finch's, then my own. All calling out from different directions. Grant started shaking, pointing into the trees.
There! It's right there!
He fired. The muzzle flashes lit up something between the trees. It wasn't human. At first, I thought it was a man crouched low, but the proportions were off. Too long in the limbs. The skin was a patchwork of mottled green and brown, slick like wet stone, and where the face should have been was a round, puckered opening, like the hole in the ground. When it moved, it didn't run. It folded back into the foliage, silent as the mist. We fell back fast, weapons up, every rustle sounding like an ambush.
One by one.
That night, we lost Grant. 1 second he was in his sleeping bag. Next there was a wet dragging sound and his muffled yell. By the time we scrambled out, the undergrowth was still shaking. But he was gone. We tracked the movement to another one of those perfect holes, half hidden under roots. No sign of him below. Just breathing. Slow, wet breathing echoing up from the dark. Barrett wanted to toss a frag down there. I told him no. Whatever this thing was, we didn't know if there were more. We needed to get out before we all joined Riker and Grant.
Extraction attempt.
We pushed hard the next morning, navigating by GPS toward the river. The voices followed. Sometimes they were behind us, sometimes ahead. Once, they came from directly above, like someone was calling from the treetops. Each time, it was someone's voice from our team, alive, dead, or missing. By late afternoon, we hit a natural choke point. 2 massive tree trunks leaning together, forming a narrow pass. I went through first. When I looked back, Barrett and Finch weren't there. Just gone. I ran back through the gap. Nothing. Only the jungle.
The last mile.
I made the river alone. The boat crew looked at me like I'd walked out of a grave. Said I was 2 days overdue, and no one had heard from us since insertion. I told command what happened. They sent another team to check the lab site. They found no shacks, no drums, no sign of a camp. Just undisturbed jungle. They did find holes, though. Dozens of them. Perfectly round. All empty. Back home, I still hear it sometimes. I'll be walking down a hallway and hear Barrett's voice behind me say,
"Hold over here."
And even though I know better, there's still that pull to turn around. Because deep down, I'm afraid that one of these times, it'll be the real him.
Iron Wraith.
Urban warfare has its own soundtrack. Distant gunfire, the low thump of mortars, the buzz of a drone overhead. Somewhere under it all, the groan of concrete under stress, like the whole city's just waiting to collapse on you. We were in the final stages of a months-long push to clear what was left of Arzul, a bombed-out city in Eastern Europe that had been fought over so many times it was more rubble than buildings. Our squad was tasked with securing a suspected insurgent supply route running through the industrial district. The team was lean. Lieutenant Vasquez, CO, Sergeant Monroe, my second, Corporal Ellis, our heavy gunner, Specialist Yarrow, drone operator, and me, Staff Sergeant Keane, infantry lead. Our orders sounded simple. Sweep an old tram yard, secure it, and hold until relieved. The intel said the place was abandoned except for a few scavengers. But intel didn't mention the other thing that had taken up residence there.
The tram yard.
We approached at dawn. The yard was a graveyard of rusting streetcars, tracks warped and buckled from years of neglect. The air smelled like ozone and oil. We entered the central repair hall, massive steel doors blown halfway off their hinges. And that's where we saw it. An old T-80 tank, tucked into the shadows at the far end. Its hull was scorched black, the treads frozen with rust. The turret drooped like a dying animal's head. It looked like it hadn't moved in decades.
"Wonder why they didn't strip it for parts,"
Ellis muttered. Vasquez shrugged.
Probably a monument to somebody's last stand.
But the second we stepped inside, Yarrow's drone feed went to static. His screen glitched with white lines and digital snow.
First movement.
We swept the building. Clear. No insurgents. But as we were setting up a perimeter, I heard something. A deep, slow clank of metal. Not the random settling of old steel, but deliberate. The T-80's turret had shifted. Just a fraction, but enough for the main gun to now be pointed squarely at our position. No engine noise, no tracks grinding. Just that movement. We froze. Ellis whispered,
"That thing doesn't even have a working powertrain. Oh."
Before he could finish, the radio on my chest hissed to life. A voice came through, garbled by static, but still sharp enough to cut through me. It was in Russian, old Soviet-era command tone, and it was coming from inside my headset. Not from Yarrow's channel, not from command.
The first kill.
That night, we took turns on watch. I had the 200 shift when the sound came again. This time, a low mechanical whine, like hydraulics under strain. I turned toward the sound and saw the T-80's headlights flicker on. They weren't the soft yellow of incandescent bulbs. They were white, cold, and far too bright, almost like searchlights. Before I could call it in, the main gun fired. There was no recoil, no muzzle flash, just the impact. A shell slammed into the far wall of the tram hall, throwing shrapnel across the floor. Ellis, who had been sleeping in that corner, didn't even have time to scream. When the dust cleared, there was nothing left of him but torn fabric and a dark smear.
Possession.
Vasquez ordered us out, but the exits had changed. Where we'd entered, the tram cars had shifted, their rust-locked wheels now somehow turned, blocking the doors. The air grew heavy with the smell of hot metal. The radio hissed again, this time in English, the voice deep and unnatural.
Hold your ground. Reinforcements inbound.
The words weren't ours. They weren't human. Yarrow's handheld drone suddenly lifted off the floor on its own, rotors spinning without input. It hovered for a moment, then zipped straight at Vasquez's head. The blades caught him in the neck before Monroe shot it out of the air. The tank's turret began to rotate again, slow and steady.
The chase.
We made a break for the east side of the yard, weaving between tram shells. Behind us, I could hear the screech of old treads grinding forward. The T-80 was moving. No diesel rumble, no exhaust. Just the sound of steel on steel, echoing through the dark. It fired again, the shell obliterating a tramcar we'd just passed. Metal rained down like shrapnel from hell. We found a maintenance tunnel and dropped into it, crawling through the dark with the sound of the tank pacing us above. Every so often, a panel in the tunnel roof would glow with that unnatural white light as it rolled past.
The endgame.
The tunnel spat us out into the yard's control building. From here, we could see the whole yard, and the T-80 sitting motionless once more, turret aimed at the building. Yarrow said he could get a satlink from the roof. Vasquez was gone. Ellis was gone. It was just me, Yarrow, and Monroe, now. Yarrow made it halfway up the ladder when the radio hissed again. This time, it was Monroe's voice.
Keen, he's not going to make it.
I looked over. Monroe was standing right beside me, mouth shut. The voice came again, identical, but now from inside the walls. The tank's headlights flared.
Extraction.
I don't remember much after that. Just white light, the sound of metal screaming, and waking up 3 days later in a field hospital outside the city. They said a patrol found me wandering alone, dehydrated, babbling in Russian. My rifle was gone. So was my helmet. The tram yard? It doesn't exist anymore. Bombed to rubble the day after I was found. But sometimes, when I'm near a motor pool, I hear that clank, that deliberate shift of metal, and I can smell hot oil and ozone again. And I know, deep down, it's still out there, waiting for a crew.
Dead depths.
Underwater ops are all about trust. You trust your gear, you trust your team, and you trust that whatever's in the dark with you, you'll see it before it sees you. Problem is, sometimes, that last one doesn't happen. We were a Navy SEAL detachment tasked with a covert recovery op in the Barents Sea. The brief was vague. Locate and secure classified materials from a sunken Soviet submarine. They told us it had gone down in the late 80s. Cold War tensions at their peak, carrying experimental missile tech. No one mentioned why the wreck had been left untouched for almost 40 years. Our dive team: Chief Petty Officer Harris, Team Lead; Petty Officer First Class Dutch Myers, our joker; Petty Officer Second Class Cruz, Sonar Specialist; Petty Officer Reed, my swim buddy; and me, Petty Officer First Class Dane. We dropped from the USS Monarch at 0230 in frigid black water. Depth 280 feet. Visibility 20 feet at best.
The wreck.
The submarine was a Delta class, or what was left of it. It lay on its side in a trench, hull buckled inward like it had been crushed by a giant's hand. Sections of the outer skin were peeled back, exposing the skeletal frame. Entire compartments were collapsed, others eerily intact. The water around it was different, heavier, almost syrupy. Our gauges still read fine, but every kick of my fins felt sluggish. Harris ordered us in through a forward torpedo hatch. Inside, the silence was absolute. No groan of settling metal, no creak of shifting bulkheads, just our breathing.
First signs.
We made our way through narrow corridors littered with silt and debris. Cruz was in the lead, sonar unit slung on his chest. He kept glancing at the display like it was lying to him.
Got something moving,
he finally said over comms.
Bearing. Wait. Now it's behind us. No. Above us.
We stopped, panning lights around. Nothing but flaking paint and shadows. That's when Dutch pointed at a bulkhead near the mess compartment. The metal was warped into a perfect concave dent. From inside. Not from an explosion. From pressure.
The control room.
The sub's control room was somehow untouched, gauges and dials frozen in time. A few skeletal remains sat at their posts, uniforms still clinging in tatters. One had his hands locked around the wheel, jaw hanging open in a silent scream. Reed shined his light on the ceiling. Long, parallel gouges ran the length of it, deep enough to tear through steel. Harris told us to secure the logbooks and intel cases. I was bagging one when the comms crackled. Not with Harris's voice, but something else. A whisper. Too distorted to make out the words, but definitely not in English.
The cargo hold.
We moved aft to the cargo bay, where the classified material was supposed to be stored. The hatch was sealed. Harris and Dutch pried it open, and a cloud of silt poured out like smoke. Inside were rows of sealed metal canisters, each marked with Cyrillic stenciling and a biohazard symbol. But between them, on the floor, was something wrong. A trail. Not of footprints. More like the smooth drag marks of something long and heavy moving in and out between the canisters. The trail ended at a large crack in the hull. A crack big enough for something to have come in.
The thing in the dark.
The water temperature dropped instantly, frosting the inside of my mask. Cruz's sonar went wild, multiple contacts moving fast, impossible to pin down. Then, from the crack in the hull, something slid into the light. At first, I thought it was a man in an old dive suit, but it kept coming. Too long. Too many joints. The helmet was just pale, translucent flesh stretched tight over a bulbous head, with eyes like clouded glass. Its mouth, if that's what it was a vertical slit that opened slowly, releasing a stream of tiny, wriggling shapes into the water. Before anyone could move, it darted forward, faster than anything that size should move, and hit Cruz. His comms cut to a burst of static and a sharp crack over the suit channel. When the thing pulled back, Cruz's faceplate was gone. His eyes were wide, mouth open, as he drifted upward into the dark.
Escape.
Harris called full retreat. We moved fast, light scanning every shadow. The corridors seemed narrower now, the silt thicker, like the sub itself was trying to hold us. Halfway to the hatch, Reed screamed. I spun to see him yanked backward into a side compartment, hands clawing at the doorway. His regulator ripped free, a rush of bubbles trailing after him. Then he was gone. Dutch's breathing was ragged over comms. "It's following us." I didn't look back.
Surface.
We cleared the hatch and kicked for the surface like our lives depended on it. Because they did. The water around us felt alive, pulsing with movement. At 60 feet, Dutch's light blinked out. His comms cut to a high-pitched tone. Then silence. Harris and I broke the surface together, hauled onto the Monarch by the recovery crew. I ripped off my mask and coughed up seawater until my vision cleared. Harris was on his knees, shaking, muttering in Russian. And Harris didn't speak Russian.
Aftermath.
Command says the wreck shifted during our dive, sealing off most compartments. They've officially called off further salvage operations. Unofficially, I know they'll send someone else eventually. Because the classified material wasn't the canisters, it was whatever came with them. And at night, when I close my eyes, I can feel the water thicken around me again. I hear the faint hiss of bubbles, and the scrape of something long and jointed, moving just behind me.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Eerie Archives channel. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment what you'd like to see in the next video. Until next time, stay eerie.